Welcome to the WA Property Q&A, the podcast where I explore the ins and outs of buying property in Western Australia. I'm your host, Peter Fletcher, and each week I interview local property experts to help you to develop a deep understanding of the nuances of buying property in WA. From market trends to legal considerations, no topic is off limits. But before we dive in, a friendly reminder. While we provide valuable information, it's important to note that nothing discussed in this podcast should be construed as personal investment advice. Always remember to seek the appropriate professional advice for your specific circumstances. Now, let's get started and unlock the secrets to successful property buying in WA. Welcome to another episode of the WA Property Q&A podcast. I'm your host, Peter Fletcher, and with me today is David Mynott. David is a builder. He's a top guy, and he runs a company called Second Dawn Construction. Is that right, Dave?
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me, Peter. I'm a sustainable home builder here in Perth.
Excellent. And in today's episode, what I want to explore is, Dave, as he's just said, you're into sustainable homes. And what I see a lot in real estate is people rushing through the front door of the home open, and going straight into the kitchen and checking out the stainless steel appliances and the stone bench tops, falling in love and buying a home that is very possibly very energy inefficient. So I want to talk about the benefits of looking at sustainable homes and what to look for, and what sort of things would go into a construction of a sustainable home.
Yeah.
Where do we start, Dave?
Well, let's start with what you just said, home opens and people going and buying a home, whether it's their first home or second, third, and probably just the lack of awareness around what makes a good home versus just your standard sort of what's in stock out there at the moment.
Mm-hmm. So for somebody that was looking at a home, going through a home open, what are some of the key factors that you would say, like if you were holding my hand at a home open saying, okay, Pete, we're going to go and find a sustainable home or an energy efficient home, what are some of the things that you'd be looking for?
Sure, great question. Firstly, you're going to struggle finding anything that's very energy efficient here in Perth. Again, mainly because most homes are double brick, single glazed, tiled roof home. So already we're on the back foot when it comes to like an energy efficient home. However, you can sort of then, I guess, combat that with the appliances that are going to be available potentially in that home. So things like solar, if there's at least some solar on the roof, then that you're going to at least be able to produce your own energy. And like those homes are going to create a lot of energy requirements to be able to keep that house cool. So that's kind of the problem there, that with that type of home, your heating and cooling bills, it's all done mechanically through your air conditioning to try and heat and cool that home. So at least you got some solar that's going to be able to help offset some of that energy requirement.
So you're talking solar panels on the roof?
That's right, yeah, solar panels. It'll be pretty rare for you to find like a battery set up with that, but if there was solar and battery, then that's going to be an extra plus. Other things are like appliances, so maybe looking for a heat pump. That's your hot water unit. And
talk to me about heat pumps, because this is something that I learned only about 12 months ago.
Yep.
And these, it's a thing apparently. So talk to me about heat pumps.
Heat pumps, so they kind of work on two principles. So one is kind of like got a coil that's wrapped around a holding tank, and that
so this is for your hot water system.
Yeah, that's right. And then sort of like refrigerants, like works on gases and heats up a coil around the bottle, which then heats up your water, but also works on like convection air, so it then helps, like you have like airflow going through the unit, so that's sort of what's helping power the actual coil heating up. So they're really energy efficient. And I think we use the iStore heat pumps, and I think they've got a stat where it costs you about $42 a year to run for your hot water. A key giveaway is if you go to Home Open and you see sort of an instantaneous hot water unit on the outside wall, or if it looks like it's, you know, anything over 20 years old in terms of like a big storage hot water unit, then it won't be a heat pump. So yeah, they are great.
So I'm just going to interrupt you, because back in the day, when I was selling real estate, I recall saying to people that instant gas hot water systems were the best, because they never ran out, and they were pretty efficient, and at the time they were the sort of the gold standard. But now they're pretty much the worst, or getting close to the worst.
Well, again, the one of the key things they're talking about there is it's gas, and so with all our homes, we're moving away from gas. We have no gas appliances because, again, when we're talking about sustainability, we're trying to move away from fossil fuels. So that's the only issue I have with it, is that they are still using gas. They are still a good unit for being heating up hot water in your home. But it's not something you're going to find on a second Dawn home now.
So we're talking, we've got solar panels on the roof, which is powering the hot water system.
Oh, if you had then you'd have zero. It would cost you $0 to run your hot water every year if you had that combo.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's a good start. So what else are we talking in terms of features of a home? What about north facing? Can we talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, again, Perth or pretty much any city, you're going to have blocks facing every which way, and you're also going to have people who have designed homes without taking north as a consideration. So what we sort of rule of thumb is you live in the north, you sleep in the south.
You live in the north?
Yep.
And sleep in the south?
Yep.
Okay.
So that's just got to do with sun orientation and stuff like that. But look, it's a classic sort of, if you got north facing, that's where you want most of your glazing. Here in Perth, we've got the solar sort of comes and will hit any glazing during winter on that north axis. And then sort of during summer, it's almost sort of straight over with a slight south. So that's kind of what they talk about north facing. Whereas like if you're in the northern hemisphere, it's all about south facing.
So Dave, I'm a massive fan of sustainable homes. One of the reasons is because what you've just described is those north facing windows where the sun is coming in through that beautiful north facing window. I don't think there's anything more luxurious in a home to have that natural sunlight coming in through the window, giving the room some natural warmth. I just think, I know I've got a patio that faces north, and I regularly go out there and have a nap in the sun. It's just luxurious.
Yeah, nice. That's we're sort of almost touching on like passive homes now, which is talking about using natural elements to heat and cool our homes, and that's a big part of passive design, is obviously having north face glazing, because that's going to capture that winter sun and help heat up your home naturally, and providing natural light and stuff like that. So yeah, passive design is a big part of what we do as well, because that's just as important as having sort of your sustainable materials as well as sustainable sort of features in construction.
Okay, so what else would someone be looking for at a home open? Or what questions could they ask a real estate agent that might surface? Yeah,
again, anything you're going to go in Perth, you're going to have to just look for what kind of appliances they have and the energy ratings that they're able to provide. Something that I would be asking a real estate agent is what is the energy rating of this home? Because that will Yeah, well, I know good luck on that, but if you ran an actual energy assessment and it came back, 2 or 4 star, you really know kind of, okay, that's the standard of this home. We're building an 8 star. So that's the difference. Like, you got very nice, comfortable, passive home versus, very low graded. You got to be cranking the aircon, cranking the heaters.
Your typical 70s or 80s home.
So, yeah, exactly.
Even through to the early 2000s, I imagine.
Yeah.
It would be like 70s and 80s homes would be 2 star maybe.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if you have any friends that are Europeans, and they come and one of the things that they always say about Perth homes is how cold they are. And coming from their climate, I feel like that's saying something. Like, and so that's something that I would ask of the real estate agent coming into a home open, because you're not just buying a home, like, you're buying all of its baggage as well, right?
Yes.
Like if it's an older existing home. So if it's sitting around 2 to 4 star, well, our minimum standards at the moment 6, and going into next year, they're requiring 7 star. So that means you're like way behind where what we're building at the moment. So that might just sort of indicate that in the future there could be a need for doing a renovation to kind of get that home back up to sort of like a good energy rating specification.
Now, talking about renovations, as I understand it, it's reasonably easy to get, well, not reasonably easy, but you could get to 6 stars reasonably easy. 7 and 8 is quite difficult, but you can get there.
Yeah.
But to go from a 2 star to a 6 in a renovation, what I understand is really expensive.
Yeah, and it would be, especially given how much like construction costs are at the moment. I was thinking about it on the way here and throwing out a challenge to all those baby boomers out there who would have...
Oh, you're talking to one.
who would have built these homes in the 80s, between, say, 78 to the 90s, and, who would have been paying sort of around $85,000 for a house and land package back then. So right now they'll be mortgage free. But also you got to remember they built to what they knew then. But now, okay, they built that stock. I think it would be great to start seeing that generation, and also go, okay, let's also take responsibility for that, and let's get our homes back up to standard for today's living for the next generation. So that when
why would someone do that, David? So aside from sort of this vague notion that we're leaving the world a better place, and there's an argument for that. I get that. Aside from that, what's the use case? What is the what's the compelling argument for someone to do that?
Yeah, well, again, 2 things. One is going to be, I think it's very important to be leaving this place in a better state than the way we found it. I think that's actually really crucial to sort of humanity and prolonging our existence, which is kind of really how I got into sustainable building in the first place. But again, look, if you're thinking about moving into retirement and stuff like that, well, you're going to have to really start watching how much you're spending, right? Because you're retirement. So if you can be able to reduce how many outgoings you've got monthly on energy bills and stuff like that, because your home's actually more efficient, well, to me, I think that's a massive win.
There'll be people listening to this podcast, David, that will go, all right, young fella, good on you. Like that's the way baby boomers talk. I'm well practiced at this.
Nice.
All right, young fella, all well and good for you to talk about this stuff. But you want me to spend, let's just pick a number, 50 grand.
Try about 200.
Okay, 200,000 to save $50 a week on my energy. And then they do the numbers, and then they go, it just doesn't pay.
Fair enough.
What would you say to people with that argument?
Well, look, I wouldn't say much to that because everyone's, entitled to sort of how they want to view those circumstances. Like I said, it's more a challenge than it is maybe what financially adds up. It's because again, it's going. All right, you're potentially in a position where you're able to upgrade that house and also have good end of life as well, right? It's going to be comfortable. But again, it's kind of it's interesting because if not that generation, then we're going to get to a point where it's like, okay, we've got to do something about this. And again, going into Europe, there's lots of incentives to be like, they've got homes there that are built in the 1800s, right? So they were much much before ours, but there's lots of incentives about doing upgrades and stuff on those homes. So I guess if it's not that generation, it's potentially maybe up to government to try and help incentivize the increasing those energy efficiencies in the existing stock.
I'm going to pick up on something you just said, and that is comfort. Now, the homes that you're building, everything that you're talking about, they're more comfortable. Now, for example, in a home that doesn't have all the features that you're talking about, so thick insulation, double glazed windows, north facing, that sort of thing, homes that don't have that, when you get up in the morning, what's the first thing you have to do? Turn the air conditioner on, or turn the gas heater on, or turn some sort of heating on, because the thing has cooled down overnight.
Absolutely.
To a point where it's no longer comfortable. In a sustainable home, or in a sustainable home that you're talking about, you get up in the morning and it's still warm.
That's right.
Correct? And personally, I think that's the selling feature for these people. They are just more comfortable homes to live in.
Definitely. Yep.
Yep.
And that's the whole point of what's called passive. It's like you don't have to do anything to the home. It's working for you to keep that sort of comfort level, set for you.
Yeah, it's working for you. Now there's a thing called solar mass, or is it thermal mass?
Sure.
Not solar mass, thermal mass.
Yes.
And it's a dense object absorbs heat and gives off the heat over time.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
Talk about that.
Yeah, sure. So what we're talking about is, generally speaking, something to do with masonry. So whether it's brick, whether it's concrete, it's something like, say, a dense material that's able to absorb heat and then slowly release that thermal heat over time.
Give me an idea of what you would install in a home that would act as a thermal mass.
So what we're doing is we're doing concrete slabs to be able to absorb that heat. Again, coming through like that, as the light from the sun comes through windows and stuff, that's going to heat up your floor, which is going to be able to help then slowly release that heat. But again, taking into consideration solar direction, so that we're only really gaining that heat during winter when we want the heat, and we're blocking the heat during summer when we don't want to gain that heat. Other things that can be done is, say, like building sort of rammed earth or a brick wall internally that's going to capture the sun coming through some of those openings.
Is this a case for those old-fashioned fireplaces where you've got this big stone and like it absorbs the heat and then keeps on giving off that heat over time?
Yeah, and again, in really well passive designed homes, you will have sort of, again, like this mass of, again, whether it's rammed earth or brick or stone like that, like a nice feature that its intention is to gain that heat to then release over time. The problem at the moment, which it works in one aspect but not another, is the double brick home, because it's really good. It's got two real dense layers. We've got two brick layers, and so during summer it works really well in the first part of the day, because it stops a lot of that heat transfer coming directly into the house. But over the entirety of a day, you got the first brick layer that's heating up, and then that transfers and starts heating up the inner.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the end of the day, when we've come home from work and we just want to like relax, you know, go to bed. Well, now you're in a double brick oven that's releasing both of those layers, and it takes a really long time for that thermal mass to release that heat. So you end up cooking all night. So if you've ever experienced, you know, real nice hot day and all you do is have your aircon cranking all night because you're just trying to keep cool. Well, that's because that's exactly what's happening is, you're in an oven.
Yeah. And WA is like, we are this double...
We're an anomaly.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that for a minute. Like, since forever, like, real estate agents that walk through a home and the first thing they do is they tap on the wall.
Yep.
Some don't, but a lot do.
Sure.
And
they still do that.
100%.
Because I'd almost say 90% of homes in Perth would have to be a double brick home now.
David, I walked through a home down in I think it was Beckenham.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, and there was a friend was there.
Yeah.
And she was looking through the home, looking to buy it. First thing I did was...
Really?
And I said, did you realise it's not double brick? And she goes, oh my God, it's not double brick. Don't want it.
Oh, wow.
It was just like...
Still that mentality to break through.
Well, and to be fair, it was it would have been a 19 probably 50s home.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, brick veneer homes of that vintage are even worse than double brick, as I understand it, because they weren't insulated.
Absolutely.
So you had that oven from the outside and it
goes
just
straight in.
Yeah, it's just.
And I can totally appreciate that that mentality, because we're doing a renovation at the moment on a house in Bayswater.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it's a 1950s, just post World War II. It's kind of just slapped it up kind of home, and it's timber frame. And, as soon as we pulled off the cladding from the outside, no insulation, the 70 mil wall, this thing was just, it would have been an icebox, the exact opposite of what we have now, an oven. So, you can see the progression there. At this point in time, you had, a lot of timber frame, no insulation, termite problems. You would have had quite a bit of dodgy electrics going on back in the day with the cloth conduits going over the cords. So it's like, when people go, but, timber frame homes, don't they burn down? Don't they get eaten by termites? Aren't they cold? It's like, well, yeah, they actually were in the 50s. But, we're in 2020 now. So how we build a timber frame home now versus then is like, completely different. So we kind of did this full circle now where it's like, well, we had this product. It was a timber frame home in the 50s. What's better than that? Well, actually, in all fairness, a double brick home is better than that in terms of, being able to keep it a bit more regulated. It's more solid construction. You don't have termite issues. So I can see how people went to that type of construction. But again, we're not in the 80s anymore either. We're in the 2020, where we also realize, hey, we have this kind of big issue looming. It's called, global warming. It's we've got this big CO2 problem. So if you look at the energy it takes to even build a double brick home, so you're talking about the heat for the kilns for the bricks, right? Like massive heat signatures, massive energy consumption there.
So talking about that, sorry to interrupt, timber framed homes, they're sustainable because
you literally have
you harvest the timber frame, the timber, and 10 years later, same spot in the ground, up comes another home.
Yep. So you actually, by doing a timber frame home, you end up with a negative carbon offset. Whereas doing a double brick, you'd create a few tons of carbon. So that's obviously a massive reason why we're doing timber frame. Is it's what I was sort of saying before. is sustainable has kind of two parts to it. You have this materials. Is it recyclable? Is it reusable? Timber, can it be regrown? Then you got the other side, which is like, how are we able to offset CO2 emissions and sort of like that embodied energy? Mm-hmm. So they're sort of two big parts that we look at in terms of like selections for our homes, as well as how like construction methods for the home. And so going with trees, like you said, you can cut one down, you can also regrow it, but once a tree's cut, it still acts like a sponge. It's still able to absorb carbon, even though it's no longer a physical tree. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm talking about. With a timber frame home, you end up with a negative carbon offset. Mm-hmm. So like it's almost a no-brainer.
So let's address the this issue about timber framed homes. People thinking that they're cold, or they're
an inferior construction method.
Or they're going to fall down or something like that. Let's address the cold heat side of things. How do you make sure that a timber framed home, whether that's a brick veneer or like a full,
framed home,
framed home, how do you make the thermal performance of the home better than a double brick home?
Sure, I'll touch on some passive principles there. Mm-hmm. So to be able to do that like very, very effectively, what you'd do is you'd have a thick insulation for your external perimeter walls. Yep. So something between like a R2.7 to R3. Mm-hmm. And then what you want to do is you need to really wrap these homes well. So whether that's like using a Proclima, Exostana external wrap, and like...
What is an external wrap?
Yeah, so I typically just known as like sarking or builder's wrap.
Okay. So it's got a shiny surface on.
Not anymore. Well, I mean, yeah, you still see that, and if you're seeing that, you need to ask your builder to stop using that because it's rubbish. Really? I have to also be honest. Like I used that on many builds prior, but as we continue to progress, mm-hmm. but also like products start to get better. If you don't have a wrap that's breathable, so allowing moisture to come outside then you're looking at sort of moisture issues. But the other thing is, if you can't have a wrap that you can't tape all the joints and have what we'd call like air tightness, mm-hmm. then again you're completely missing an opportunity there because. Mm-hmm. Imagine.
So is this like a Gore-Tex wrap?
Yeah, it's almost exactly that. The wrap that we use, the Proclima, they write on it dry as a bones. So, wow. You could, and I've done this already. We've wrapped the house with it and started working on the inside while the outside was still like didn't have cladding on it because it was completely waterproof, and we started working both sides of the walls at the same time. Just keep going.
Wow.
So in terms of being able to actually keep the job going, it's a positive. But think about your home. If you wrapped it in like a plastic bag and you had heat inside and can't escape, mm-hmm. well, that's kind of what you're trying to do with these wraps. Mm-hmm. The only caveat to that is if you're going to wrap your whole home, including your roof and everything, you're going to have to then have ways to be able to vent air in and out. Mm-hmm. So that might be through sort of like a heat vent recovery unit because you need that fresh air exchange still.
Yes.
But to do that, then that's what we're talking about, the passive. It's like you're keeping heat in, mm-hmm. Because with homes that we have now, that's kind of the biggest problem, or one of the big problems, is that you lose like 60% just through your windows, like heating through your windows and through your roof, and through like any other doors and stuff like that, because they're just not sealed very well. Mm. And if you think that I'm not on point, if you've got a tiled house, like I've lived in a tiled house, and I'd have a cup of water on the table next to me, and in the morning it'd just be covered in dust. Well, that dust is coming straight from your ceiling. That's why, because the thing's a sieve. Mm-hmm. So going back to our houses, or like how you have a nice thermally comfortable home. Good insulation in the walls, wrapping it well, and then even adding like a batten cavity. So then having a cavity externally, so there's like airflow.
Yeah, that's important, isn't it? Because it's the still air that
of course,
it's the air that is the insulation.
Yeah, it's kind of funny enough. It is really another barrier. But again, if you got that cavity and you got moisture getting drawn outside from inside, then it's also it can dry and get whisked away, and hot air rises. So then that's creating sort of like convection through the cavity walls, which can sort of get rid of the heat that way, which is, again, just that sort of passive principle. So then you also have a bit of a barrier. Another thing that passive design tries to do is reduce thermal conductivity. So trying to not bring heat directly from outside to inside through a singular material. So then just having barriers between multiple material surfaces to reduce or slow down the thermal conductivity going through the house. So that's another real key way to achieve that.
And coming back to existing homes, are there ways to retrofit these things? And I'm just thinking, you said 200 grand before, and I'm just thinking, wow, this.
But that's only because that's how expensive construction is now.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
But there are ways to retrofit these things.
Sure. And the way that I would retrofit, which would actually create an amazing home, is I'd go and put a timber frame exterior wall around, like if you had a double brick did that, now you got what we call like a reverse brick veneer, which is like highly efficient.
Yes.
But because it's a bit expensive to do up front, but if you've already got the walls there, I'd go and do a timber frame around externally and again wrap it properly. And then you're creating that barrier because you want a light skin outside because then it will gain heat quicker, but it releases heat quicker. But it's also taking the brunt of that solar gain. So I'd do that. I'd go and replace, retrofit all the windows. So I'd take the windows out and retrofit them with double glazed windows because, again, you're increasing your R value dramatically there. And, again, sealing them really well. And the other thing I'd do is if you had a tile roof, I'd be getting rid of that straight away. And again, look at one of two things.
Back in the day, tile roofs were
they're still pretty popular now.
Yeah, they are, and they were almost an
upgrade, or
like a status symbol. In some ways, it was especially those shiny Bristol tile roofs with
Again, it's like I can imagine. I can understand why, because before that you had those sort of old school galvanized sheets, and that wouldn't have said luxury to anyone. But again, you just all you're doing is creating a massive terracotta clay oven.
Yeah.
And again, when I was living in one, you really notice it where the hip coming down the roof, over a wall, where that tile is real close to just your ceiling. Those rooms get real hot. I noticed they're really warm in those rooms. Again, because you just got mass heat right there, and it's just getting transferred into that room.
Yeah.
So I'd be getting
and it absorbs that heat and keeps on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Tin sheets still get really hot. You could cook an egg on that on a hot day, no worries. But it also releases heat quickly. So I'd be doing one of two things: is either ventilating that roof really well, getting some R6 bats in there, insulation bats. So again, trying to reduce that heat gain.
I just want to quickly jump in on the R6 bats that you just spoke about. I have a personal experience with.
Okay, go.
I'm a massive fan of all that we're talking about here, and I think that homes that are thermally efficient and sustainable, they are more comfortable. So I decided I'm going to replace the insulation that was in our ceiling. I think it would have been about an R1 or something.
Just the old stuff.
I'm going to get rid of it, and I'm going to put R5 in there. I think it was going to
Probably
be.
would have been R4s.
Well, they came around and they said, well, we'll give you a quote, and we're going to put R4 in.
Yeah.
And I go, not good enough. I want minimum R5. And they said, well, it's going to be this much extra for R5, and it was substantially more expensive.
Yep.
And only a little bit more for R6.
Yep.
And I went, let's go R6.
Yep.
So out comes the old, in goes the new, and then you look up into the ceiling space, and there's no ceiling space left. Because those bats, they're really thick.
Yeah, they are really thick.
They're massive.
Yeah, they're about 300 mil or something like that.
Oh, at least that. And so all the electricians that go up into the roof space hate me now.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I think our home is more comfortable as a result of doing that.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It sort of retains that sort of, you've got that big doona on top. We still lose a lot of good quality air out through the old. We've got that LED light windows.
Yep.
Yeah, they look lovely, but they leak air like.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm glad you noticed the difference, because the sort of minimum standard at the moment for ceiling bats is like an R4, but for us the minimum's R6, because the difference between R4 and R6 cost wise, like, it is more expensive, but it's not a huge expense when you're talking about the difference in like thermal benefit for the house. So it's like, again, that's sort of our motto, is just like building better homes. Like, why do the minimum when you can do something that's a little bit better?
Mm-hmm.
And over the long run, you'd just be way better. So again, getting back to retrofitting an existing home, I do be doing R6s in the ceiling, and I'd be getting rid of the tiles and either ventilating the roof space really well, or if you can, if the roof shape's not too difficult, again, I'll be putting like a Proclimber Mento wrap on it. So wrapping it up, wrap that whole building up, and then be putting in a heat vent recovery unit to begin that air exchange. With a timber frame external, like, you'd end up with such a great home. Again, swapping out the appliances, putting some solar panels on and swapping out for a heat pump, you'd end up with all of a sudden a crazy, impressive, energy efficient home.
Yeah, energy efficient, so it's cheap to run, despite it could be a big home, but it's cheap to run.
Yep.
And I come back to this, it's just more comfortable.
Yep.
And there's some real benefits in that. I wanted to touch on something else there, Dave, in terms of No, I've actually forgotten what I was going to say.
Well,
Just keep
I
on going there.
got a question for you. I'm not sure if many guests have questions for you.
I like this.
But obviously, you've sold a lot of real estate. What I'm curious about is how many people actually think about, is this home an energy efficient home? And is that something that's on anyone's radar, or if that's an important sort of box to be ticked when they're looking at buying a home? Or is it just, I just need to get in somewhere?
Almost none.
Yeah, okay.
Almost none. Yeah, which is, it's run through the front door, check out the stainless steel appliances and the stone bench tops, fall in love with it, and then, okay, now we're going to pay for the high energy bills for the rest of our lives.
Yeah,
and it's
the mold issues and all the leaky, all
of the above. Which is a great segue, because you've reminded me what I was going to talk to you about. There's a place not 400 metres from here. It's literally just around the corner. An extension, second story extension, and I look at it and I go, okay, this home faces west, so the long boundary down the north boundary would be the ideal place to put windows.
Yep.
What they've done is they put one window, which is a bathroom window
Mm-hmm.
on the north and
Mm-hmm.
this second story extension.
Yep.
And they've got west facing and south facing windows. You couldn't choose worse places to put windows.
Yeah, yeah.
And especially big, they're picture windows.
Yeah.
I would put it to you that in the world of builders, you are a unicorn. That
Yeah. There's
very
only a few of us.
there's very few people who are talking, and I think there's a lot of people would go that sustainable homes are too expensive to build. But I suspect that what you will say is you can do both. You can have a sustainable home and you can have a nice design.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Check out our designs. We've been working with one of Australia's best sustainable architects to design our homes so that they are, absolutely beautiful. So, yeah, of course a sustainable home can be a beautiful home. In fact, I'll put it to you that they're probably better than what you see most other people putting up. You got to just remember how our industry really works. So you got designers that are just pumping out floor plans and elevations, and they're trying to make them look a little bit different to the last one, and they're just trying to work within the constraints of what bricks can do and what steel can do, and they're very boxy. You got render going everywhere, but that's all they're trying to do is fit within council regulations. So they definitely put a lot of dampeners on what we could really do. So you got to fit within those constraints. You got to fit in constraints of the block. You got to fit in constraints of people's budgets. But of course, then you've got to fit into constraints of like, how do we make this look nice? But I'm not sure if passive design's getting taught to these designers, because if it was, you wouldn't be seeing west-south facing windows. What I do in that situation is put a skillion on it, have highlight windows, so it's capturing that north sun. I mean, I can understand that you're only going to have a bathroom window that's obscure, because if you're at 2-story, you're going to have visual issues over to your neighbours. But again, if you can put those windows up high, you get away with that with your council regulations, and you're going to be able to get that north sun. And again, we live in the north, we sleep in the south.
That would be as simple as, well, could we have flipped the design so that the bathroom was on the south of the home and the living areas were on the north?
And so with the way we've designed our homes, we're able to do that. So something we really what we've taken into consideration is that you're not always going to be able to have a north-facing block. That's just how it is. So how do we create a home that's going to be able to work any which direction, and then being able to just flip certain aspects so that it's going to be able to be more comfortable? And that's just a key part of it, really, is just knowing some of these real simple principles. I mean, if you listen to this podcast, you're going to be, as a designer, you're going to all of a sudden be like, okay, well, there's a few easy things I could do to design any home better.
And to the real estate agents that are listening to this and going, well, what's the so what here? They talk to developers a lot, and the developers are going, well, how can I put the maximum number of units on
on the site,
this land? We'll make best use of it, and which is really to say maximise the resale value. And I would say to them that resale value, part of that equation is being able to say to the buyers that come through, this is sustainably designed, so your resale in 10, 20 years' time is going to be much better than something where you've got south and west facing windows.
Sure.
The future buyers are going to be very, very savvy around this subject.
Yeah, and I reckon there's, again with that, there's no differentiator between that development and the next development other than maybe some cool features, right?
Stainless steel appliances.
Exactly what you're getting in it. So, yeah, I totally agree. And when there's a lack of supply with, passive and sustainable homes here already. If you're able to provide that, I dare say you'll be able to sell that at a premium because, well, my point is that we've got clients that are happy to pay that little bit extra to build those homes to a better standard.
Yeah,
so there's going to be someone that wants to then buy that's already existing. And if there's not much that's available, well, supply meets demand, right? So if the demand is there and the supply is low, well, then you're going to be able to charge a better premium.
Yeah. And despite that, there's very few people that are saying, I want to buy a sustainable home. People who do want sustainable homes, people who are aware of the benefits of them, they are willing to pay a premium.
That's right.
No question in my
mind. And if you
mind.
could advertise it that way, you're going to be able to get those people who are looking for that. But again, it's going to be pretty rare for you to find a sustainable home to even sell.
Yeah.
But if you could, I'd be advertising the life out of it because there's people that are wanting that. But to buy it existing's almost like, finding hen's teeth, right? So, if you're able to be, as a real estate agent, able to push into that side of things, like even if it is just meeting sort of like a 6-star energy rating, like I'd be selling that because that's better than a 2 or 4-star. And something that I've noticed is that over the last few years, people are doing, like for sales of homes, people are a lot more interested in getting builders reports. How's the state of this home? Well, I'd be adding in what's the energy rating of this home as well. So they're not getting just like what's the state, but what's the energy rating. I think if real estates were able to start providing that to people, like I think then all of a sudden people would be more attuned to it and they would be actually more expecting that that's a part of, the information of this house. Yep. So that'd be really awesome to start seeing real estate agents offering that information.
I think we'll see it.
Yeah, you reckon?
But it won't be immediate.
Fair enough.
We're talking 5-10 year window.
Yeah.
But these conversations, there's a lot more of these conversations being had now.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think it's going to change the way property is marketed in 5 to 10.
I think it also open everyone's eyes and probably concern a lot of people because can you imagine if you're having every house on the market getting an energy rating, it's coming in like sub 6, then people would just be like, oh my goodness, but also that would be I'd say a win on our part only because we're trying to be ahead of where everyone else is at. I think it'd really just put the pressure on sort of a lot of those bigger builders to start offering better homes as well. Because if that's what the market's wanting, then that's what they're going to have to try and get to. Look, it's kind of quite an exciting time at the moment, and happy to be at the front pushing the charge here. But yeah.
Dave, I'm just aware of time.
It's
starting to get away from us, and I've got to be. I really appreciate this conversation. I think we could have kept on going.
I reckon we still could, mate. We might have to do part 2.
Yeah. Now, for those who want to know more about you and your company, where can they get hold of you, and what's the best way? Yeah,
well, if you're listening to this, when's this getting put out?
Don't ask me hard questions, Dave.
Well, we're going to be at the Homes Expo this weekend, but I'm not sure if it's going to be.
No, it won't be out by this weekend.
Oh, good. So, look, you can find us online, either through Instagram, Facebook, or our website, www.seconddawn.com.au. You can find us there, and you can check out our home designs, or, you might see us out there building.
Yeah. Well, for anyone that is curious about this, I would say have a chat to Dave because he's a wealth of knowledge, and I've learned a lot today, Dave. And
that's awesome.
Really appreciate your time.
I'm glad you have.
So that's a wrap for this episode of WA Property Q&A. Until next time, this has been Peter Fletcher. And that wraps up another episode of the WA Property Q&A. We hope you found our discussion valuable and gained some valuable insights into the world of property buying in Western Australia. Remember, while we strive to provide useful information, it's crucial to consult with the appropriate professionals before making any investment decisions. Don't forget to tune in next week for another exciting episode where we continue to unravel the mysteries of the WA property market. If you have any questions or topic suggestions, feel free to reach out to us. Until then, happy property hunting, and remember to seek the right advice for your personal circumstances. Thank you for listening.